Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa
Yeah, no,
Cotton. I am a field specialist in nutrition and health education for the University of Missouri Extension. And today's topic is heart health. So, unless you've been told that you have heart disease, it could be easy to think that you don't have to worry about heart health. But the truth is that every day there are people who suffer from heart attacks who didn't know they were even at risk. It's a common misconception that heart disease only affects men. However, the truth is that heart disease is the number one cause of death for women in the United States. Women sometimes experience heart disease a little differently than men, and over 60 million women in the US are living with some form of heart disease. Heart disease is the leading cause of death for women in the United States and can affect women at any age. In 2021, it was responsible for the deaths of over 300,000 women, or about one in every female deaths. Research has shown that only about half of US women recognize that heart disease is their number one killer. Nearly as many women as men die of heart disease each year in the US, and this map shows death rates from heart disease in women in the United States. So that darker red indicates a higher death rate. Despite increases in awareness over the past few decades, only about half of women recognize that heart disease is the number one killer. Women are also more likely than men to have no symptoms of coronary heart disease. Because women and their doctors may not recognize coronary heart disease symptoms that are different from men's, women may not be diagnosed and may not be treated as quickly as men. Heart disease and stroke can affect a woman at any age, making it vital for all women to understand their personal risk factors and family history. Cardiovascular disease is the number one killer of new moms and accounts for over 1/3 of maternal deaths. Black women have some of the highest maternal mortality rates, and recent research has focused on heart disease linked to pregnancy-related complications. Diabetes and hypertension during pregnancy, as well as early delivery, have been linked to increased cardiovascular disease risk years later. Going through menopause does not cause cardiovascular disease, but the approach of menopause in life marks a point when women's cardiovascular risk factors can accelerate. They can speed up and make increased focus on health during this pivotal life stage very important. So I have a video to show you today. This was created by the FDA and kind of just talks about how a lot of women don't always recognize the risk factors for heart disease, and why this can look different in women than it does in men.
Did you know, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, in 2017, heart disease killed 299,578 women, which is about 1 in every 5 female deaths. We set out to find what women know about heart health. Here's what we found out. What is the leading cause of death for women?
I don't really know.
I would say breast cancer.
I think it might be heart disease.
Heart disease is the leading cause of death for women in the United States. Do you think age is a risk factor for heart disease?
Heart disease, I would say starting in the 50s would be an age factor for heart disease.
As you get older, it gets worse.
The risk of heart disease increases for everyone as they age. For women, the risk goes up after menopause, but younger women can also develop heart disease. What are the symptoms of a heart attack?
Chest constriction, pain in the chest, and I've always heard the left arm hurts.
Tightness in your chest. Shortness of breath.
The symptoms of a heart attack are an ache or feeling of tightness in the chest, arms, neck, jaw, back, or abdomen, shortness of breath, nausea or vomiting, lightheadedness, extreme fatigue, breakout in a cold sweat. Are the symptoms of a heart attack the same for women and men?
I assume that the symptoms for a heart attack for men and women are the same.
The symptoms for women aren't as obvious as they are for men.
I know it's different for women.
Well, the most common symptom for both women and men is chest discomfort. You can have a heart attack, without experiencing chest pain or pressure. Symptoms in women can be the same or different as those in men. Women are more likely to have other symptoms such as back pain, jaw pain, shortness of breath, indigestion, nausea, or vomiting. Has anyone in your life been affected by heart disease?
My brother passed away last year from a heart disease.
My grandma passed away from some kind of a heart attack or heart disease, actually.
My mother-in-law had heart disease. I think of my father who died of a heart attack at 46.
I've lost my sister who was older than me.
Take steps today to improve your heart health. Eat a healthy diet, manage your health conditions, know the signs of a heart attack. Talk to your healthcare provider if you have any questions about your heart health or risk factors. We hope you learned something new today. Learn more at www.fda.gov/women's heart health.
All right. So the habits we adopt for heart health are good for our overall health as well. So there's a strong likelihood that if you adopt a new habit for heart health, you will also feel better. And today we're going to talk about the American Heart Association's Life's Simple 7. These are tips to help us become more heart health aware. These American Heart Health Association recommendations can help women and men prevent or manage heart disease and live better. So the first one is to stop smoking. Smoking increases the risk for heart disease and other chronic conditions. Cigarette smokers have a higher risk of developing cardiovascular disease. If you smoke, quitting is the best thing that you can do for your health. According to the CDC, smoking is a major cause of cardiovascular disease and causes 1 of every 4 deaths from CVD or cardiovascular disease. Smoking can raise triglycerides, which is a type of fat found in our blood. It can lower our good cholesterol, our HDL. It can make our blood sticky and more likely to clot, which can block blood flow to the heart and brain, can damage cells that line the blood vessels, and increase the buildup of plaque in blood vessels. Can also cause thickening and narrowing of blood vessels as well. Breathing secondhand smoke also harms our health. Secondhand smoke causes nearly 34,000 early deaths among non-smokers in the US from coronary heart disease each year. Non-smokers who breathe secondhand smoke at home or at work increase their risk of developing heart disease by 25 to 30%. Breathing secondhand smoke interferes with the normal functioning of the heart, blood, and vascular systems in ways that increase your risk of having a heart attack. The next step, or next Simple 7 strategy, is to manage our blood pressure. 1 of every 3 adults has high blood pressure, though many don't know that they have it. High blood pressure is the single most significant risk factor for heart disease. The goal is to have blood pressure measures less than 120/80. When your blood pressure stays within healthy ranges, you reduce the strain on your heart, arteries, and kidneys, which keeps you healthier longer. Blood pressure is the pressure of blood pushing against the walls of your arteries. Arteries carry blood from your heart to other parts of your body. Your blood pressure normally rises and falls throughout the day. Blood pressure is measured using 2 numbers. The first number, called systolic blood pressure, measures the pressure in your arteries when your heart beats. The second number, called diastolic blood pressure, measures the pressure in your arteries when your heart rests between beats. High blood pressure usually has no warning signs or symptoms, and many people do not know that they have it. So measuring your blood pressure is the only way to know whether you have high blood pressure or not. High blood pressure can damage your health in many ways. It can seriously hurt important organs like your heart, brain, kidneys, and eyes. High blood pressure can damage your arteries by making them less elastic, which decreases the flow of blood and oxygen to your heart and leads to heart disease. The next step is to maintain a healthy weight. Too much fat, especially around your midsection, puts you at higher risk for high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes. Excess weight around the midsection, which is sometimes referred to as having an apple shape, so that's an apple shape, but excess weight that's typically around your hips and thighs is often referred to as being pear-shaped. Apple shape can put your health at an increased risk even if your weight is normal. Therefore, waist circumference is often a measurement that is monitored. So for men, a normal waist measures less than 40 inches, whereas women, a normal waist measurement would be less than 35 inches. So when you shed extra fat, specifically around the midsection, as well as unnecessary pounds, you reduce the burden on your heart, lungs, blood vessels, and skeleton. Losing weight is not easy, particularly as we get older. So some tips that you might consider are, first just to set realistic short-term goals. I like to think of it as taking baby steps. So it's important to know what your big goal is, what that big number is for you, or what you're working towards long term. But sometimes that can become a little bit overwhelming. So think about the small steps that it's going to take you to get there and start just knocking those out one by one. So things like, maybe switching from eating certain foods to foods that have more fiber or protein to help you feel fuller longer. Maybe it's taking a walk on your lunch break or not sitting as long throughout the day. Think about those small steps that you can take. This really sets us up for success and helps us not to take on too much at one time. Also think about choosing a few days and keeping track of what you're eating, kind of creating a food journal. This really brings awareness to how much you are currently taking in so that you can see what you're working with and what changes you might need to make. You can adjust your diet or habits to promote healthier choices. So I know for myself, often when I do a food journal, I see right away that I need to eat more vegetables. That's almost always the common thing that I find. And so that can kind of help me just feel motivated to make that change and to start eating more vegetables. We also want to consider the portion sizes that we're eating. Smaller portions can prevent us from eating too much. One way we can naturally take smaller portions is to eat off smaller plates or out of smaller containers. Sometimes this tricks our brain to not realize that we're taking less than we are. So smaller portions or being aware of your portion size is really important. You don't have to give up all of your favorite things. It's really about learning to make substitutions and practicing moderation. It's okay to have things in moderation, and the key is to take time and really enjoy the food that you're eating. So if you are someone who enjoys chocolate like I do, it's okay for me to have chocolate. What will help me not to overindulge is to make sure when I am eating it that I really take the time to think about the flavors and enjoy the taste and try not to be distracted when I'm eating it. When I'm more mindful in the eating of that food, I'm satisfied with less than I would be if I'm just distracted and not really paying attention to it. And we also want to be physically active. We want to move more and sit less. Even when, we have a desk job, it's important to get up and move every hour. So think about doing 3 to 5 minutes of active movement for every hour that you sit. Getting up, walking around your if you work at home, kind of walking around the house or walking around your office, stepping outside, something like that, just to get a little movement in every hour. Eating better is the next simple 7-step or strategy. A diet that includes a wide variety of fruits and vegetables is a great start to a healthier body. The American Heart Association also recommends that you eat fish twice every week. Oily fish like salmon and mackerel are recommended because they contain omega-3 fatty acids, which may help reduce clotting in your arteries and protect against hardening of the arteries. For heart health, limited saturated and trans fat is important. And we want to choose and prepare foods with little or no salt. Think about yourself and about how much sugar you eat, particularly added sugar. And I wonder, have you considered how that sugar might impact your heart health? In a study published in the Journal of Internal Medicine, people who obtained 17 to 21% of their calories from added sugar had a 38% higher risk of dying from cardiovascular disease, which involves, your heart and blood vessels, or sometimes both. So they had a 30% higher risk of dying from cardiovascular disease than those who just got about 8% of their calories from added sugar. So the risk of dying from cardiovascular disease was more than double for those who consumed the larger amount of added sugar. So in other words, the higher your sugar intake, the higher your risk for cardiovascular disease or death due to cardiovascular diseases. In this 15-year study, both men and women were impacted by added sugar intake. Age, physical activity level, and body mass index did not impact the outcome. It isn't clear exactly how excess sugar harms the heart. One idea is that empty calories replace foods that provide needed vitamins and minerals. The study found that even otherwise healthy eaters who they ate healthy, but they also consumed a high level of sugar, they still had higher mortality rates from heart disease. So what is added sugar? Added sugar refers to sugars and syrups that are added to foods and drinks when they're processed or prepared. Naturally occurring sugars are those that make fruit sweet and they're just naturally in foods like fruit, as I mentioned, and dairy. These types of natural sugars do not contribute to higher risks of cardiovascular disease. It's really the added sugars that we are concerned with. So how can you tell how much natural and added sugars you're eating? Well, thanks to changes in the food labeling law, the nutrition facts label tells exactly how much added sugar you are getting per serving. The food label lists grams of sugar per serving, as well as added sugars in a separate line. The added sugars are included in the total sugars amount. Since there are natural sugars in fruit and dairy, don't be alarmed to see these natural sugars reflected on the label. Food manufacturers began listing the number of added sugars in July of 2018. And all labels now, it's a requirement that they list the added sugar. So just kind of so you know, as you look at a label, you'll see that amount of sugar in grams. So in the label on the screen, the total sugar is 12 grams. And then we know that right below that, we can see that there are 10 grams of added sugar. So if we did some simple subtraction, 12 minus 10, we would know that 2 of the grams of sugar in this food were naturally occurring. So those 2 grams we're not really worried about. It's the added sugar, the 10 grams that we're focused in on. And sometimes grams is a hard thing to picture. So just so you know, 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon. So I like to picture those little sugar packages you get at restaurants. That's a teaspoon. And so that would equal 4 grams. So, if you took 12 divided by 4, that would be 3 of those packages of sugar at a restaurant that you see on the side of the table. 1 gram of sugar is equal to 4 calories. All right. Another important thing to remember about sugar is that it can occur in many forms and has a lot of different names. And so on the screen here, you can see some examples of sugar words that we use they all mean sugar. So corn syrup solids, dextrose, high fructose corn syrup. There's many more. There are over 50 names of sugar, different types of sugar. And so one trick is to look for foods that end in OSE, as these indicate some form of sugar. In one day, if we think about how much sugar we should be consuming in a day or eating in a day, we have some recommendations out there. So this picture comes from the American Heart Association. And the recommendation here is that we get no more than 6 teaspoons of sugar per day or 100 calories worth of sugar. That's for women. Men can have a little bit more. Their recommendation is no more than 9 teaspoons of sugar per day or 150 calories from sugar. So, this is kind of a nice visual to look at. And I do want to tell you about a study, again, in the Journal of Internal Medicine, found that most adults in the United States consume about 22 teaspoons of added sugar daily. So we, on average, consume a whole lot more than the recommendation that we're seeing here. And we might think, oh, I don't really consume that much sugar. But if we think about it, a 20-ounce bottle of soda that contains sugar, so it wouldn't be a diet soda, a regular soda, it can contain around 65 grams of sugar, which is about 16 teaspoons. So right there, we're well over the recommendation. The other thing to remember is that sugar is in foods that we might not think about being sweet. Or we just might not realize or consider that those are a source of added sugar. So things like ketchup, barbecue sauce, salad dressing, even foods that we might think of as healthier, like yogurt, can often contain a lot of sugar. So we want to look at our labels and compare the different options to choose something that has less added sugar. All right, the next step. So moving on from limiting the added sugar in our diet, our next step or strategy is managing cholesterol. We want to keep our total cholesterol under 200 milligrams per deciliter of blood. Cholesterol can build up in the arteries and increases the risk factors for heart attack and stroke. Cholesterol is a waxy substance, and your body needs it to build cells and make vitamins and other hormones. But too much cholesterol can be a problem. Cholesterol comes from 2 sources. Your liver makes all the cholesterol you need, and the remainder of the cholesterol in your body comes from the foods from animals like meat, poultry, and dairy products. These all contain dietary cholesterol. These foods are also high in saturated and trans fats. These fats cause your liver to make more cholesterol than it otherwise would. For some people, this can take their cholesterol to an unhealthy level. The 2 types of cholesterol are LDL cholesterol, which is typically called bad, and then HDL, which is considered good. Too much of the bad kind, or not enough of the good kind, increases the risk cholesterol will slowly build up in the inner walls of the arteries that feed the heart and brain. Triglycerides are the most common type of fat in the body, and they store excess energy from your diet. A high triglyceride level combined with high LDL, or the bad cholesterol, and low HDL, or the good cholesterol, is linked with fatty buildups within the artery walls, and this can increase the risk of heart attack and stroke. The American Heart Association says, when it comes to cholesterol, remember this: check, change, and control. So this stands for check your cholesterol levels. It's key to know your numbers and assess your risk. Then we want to change our diet and lifestyle if we need to help improve these levels. And finally, we want to control our cholesterol with help from our doctor if needed. The next strategy is to get active. 30 minutes of moderate daily exercise can reduce our risk of heart disease. So move more every day and include different types of physical activity to keep things interesting. So here are some of the different types of exercise and the goals around those types of exercise that we want to work towards. For most people, 30 minutes of moderate daily exercise is going to be the goal. So 30 minutes a day, most days of the week. Most people often think of endurance, or which is also called aerobic or cardiovascular exercise, which includes activities like walking, running, biking, or swimming. This is what I think most people's heads go to when you hear exercise. And this is a really important form of physical activity. The goal is to get, again, that moderate level, so about 30 minutes a day, most days, or if you want to think about what you would get for the total week, that would look like 150 minutes per week of the moderate. Or if you are someone who enjoys more vigorous exercise, you would only need 75 minutes per week. But flexibility exercises are also really important, and we want to try to get 10 minutes without stopping 3 to 5 days a week. And this can include things like just general stretching that you might include in a warm up or cool down before other exercises, but it could also include things like yoga. And then finally, strengthening exercises or strength training. And our goal here is to get 8 to 10 strengthening exercises 2 to 3 days a week. If you look at this and you think, wow, that's very overwhelming, that's a lot of different exercise and time, I would encourage you to think about joining a class, because often you can get a lot of different types of exercise, like the ones listed on this screen, just in one class. And following an instructor can make it fun and help you to stay safe as you're learning how to do this. Next, we want to reduce our blood sugar. Diabetes is a major risk factor for cardiovascular disease. Over time, high blood sugar can damage blood vessels and the nerves that control your heart. People with diabetes are also more likely to have other conditions that raise the risk for heart disease, like high blood pressure, or too much LDL cholesterol, or high triglycerides. If there is a family history of diabetes, it's worth the effort to keep track of your blood sugar. And finally, to make these changes and to see success in your goal setting, I think it's always really important to establish and reflect on the why behind your healthy habits and the goals that you set. So specific to this presentation, what do you want your heart to be healthy enough for? Maybe it's your kids or your family. Maybe it's so that you can do more of the activities that you love. But I think it's a good idea to take some time and think about what your why is. And I encourage you to write that down on a piece of paper and stick it somewhere that you'll see it often. And this can help to motivate you to carry out some of the strategies that I talked about today, or any of the healthy habits that you're trying to increase or maintain in your life. Remember that small steps can make a big difference when it comes to your health. There was a famous study conducted in London in which researchers followed drivers and ticket takers on a double-decker bus for a period of time. They found that the bus drivers had more heart attacks than the ticket takers. This is an example of how just a little bit of movement makes a big difference in your health, because those ticket takers had to move around more than the bus drivers did. And just that little bit of movement had a big impact on their health. The same goes for us. Those little bits, those small steps that we can add into our day are going to add up to something bigger. All right, so with that, I want to leave you with my contact information. If you have any questions about heart health or other aspects of health, please don't hesitate to reach out. Again, my name is Melissa Cotton. I'm a field specialist in nutrition and health education for the University of Missouri Extension. Thank you.